Hi and welcome to Small Talk. I'm Tamim, one of your hosts, and joining me is my better half, Sharon.
Hi everyone, and thank you for joining us today. We thought, what a better topic to talk about than to talk about how we got together. So, we were introduced to each other by our families actually, and I know a lot of people would prefer to call that an arranged marriage, but I think it's got quite a negative connotation around it and prefer the term assisted marriage.
So, what we mean by assisted marriage, I had a marriage CV where it had all my information about my age, my work, my education, and my wife had the same. And the CVs were exchanged between families, and then from that we decided to meet each other for the first time in
Yeah.
2019.
Yeah, and I think when we say they were obviously assisted by the families is the fact that we actually had no direct contact with each other, not until after we kind of confirmed we liked each other like that. So it was through my cousin's sister and it was through his
Cousin sister as well.
cousin sister as well. And we always hear all of this stuff about arranged marriages, and there's always quite a lot of negative connotations. I think a lot of people get it confused with forced marriages. And this is why I don't like using the term arranged anymore. I just feel like assisted sounds better. And actually, if you look at our society right now, a lot of, even the TV shows we're watching is very much in that similar sense. Like, Married at First Sight, they were assisted by all of these counselors to kind of choose their perfect spouse, and that's essentially what we're doing, but we have been shunned for doing it that way, and now it's such a normal thing. But there's still that negative connotation around the South Asian community choosing to find their spouses this way.
Yeah, but I don't think they do it as well as we do it.
Oh no, of course not. I mean, obviously ours has been down in generations
But
and generations.
I don't disagree with it being called arranged marriage either, because I don't see it as when I see arranged marriage, I don't necessarily go, oh, that means forced marriage. I know some people do, but I don't think, for me, that doesn't necessarily mean the name should be changed, although I don't disagree with calling it assisted marriage.
So one of the reasons why I prefer the assisted term rather than the arranged term is because whenever I used to bring it up to people, they used to always ask me questions about if I had a choice, could I have said no? And that's one of the reasons why I felt like arranged has been very misplaced in our society, and it's basically the same as forced marriage, whereas obviously in our community we know what the difference is, and majority of people might know what the difference is, but I feel like the people that I've spoken to who have had that reaction, they are not getting that understanding that we need. And I think it's weird because I would never tell someone, oh, did you have a choice? Even if it's someone they chose themselves, you wouldn't really question it so much. But when it comes to us, there's all these questions, all these answers that we have to give whenever we mention it's an arranged marriage. You wouldn't really want to ask so many questions about someone's personal relationship like that. But I think because people are so curious about what it means, they do ask those questions.
People already had bad experiences with it, arranged marriage, and so they've probably, that's the only experience, or that's the only thing they remember, is that someone got arranged marriage, but they were actually forced to get married. So that's why the people you speak to.
Well, let me ask you this: have you been asked if you had a choice
never.
in the matter?
Never.
So do you think it's down to gender?
But it's also probably because they feel like women probably are
less likely
to say no and more likely to be forced into something than men are, which is not necessarily true.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't think that's necessarily true. I think there's obviously a bigger number in women getting forced.
But then it could be said that sometimes, or not sometimes, it'll probably a lot of times, especially the parents or the uncles that have come from back home were forced in, not that necessarily they were forced into marrying somebody, but they were forced into a situation where they had to get married. So that would be the same thing, no? As kind of forced marriage, even though they probably didn't mind marrying, but if they had a choice, they probably would say, no, I don't really want to marry at this point. But because of the situation they were in, okay, I'm going to get married. For example, to become legal in this country.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I think that's probably one of the other reasons why people feel like that about the concept of arranged marriage
True.
versus like forced marriage as well, because I think it's the lines are so blurred now that it's almost one and the same. Whereas obviously for me and you, like we had a very good experience with it. You know,
Yeah.
we got the choice. We could say no. So
Well, we had a long time to, think this through as well.
I don't think we had that long.
No, we had a long time in the sense that we had our nikah done, and then we had 6 months.
Yeah, but at that point we were already married, so I don't think it makes that much of a difference. But
True, but it was a good way to get to know each other.
so we were introduced by CVs. I remember when I got his CV, it was sent to me on my WhatsApp, which is, you know, classic, standard practice.
What was your reaction to the photos?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think, you know, there's very clearly that no one in my family liked the photos. And it's not that they were bad photos. I think at the time when I saw it, camera quality wasn't the best. And it was one of those ones where we were like, oh my gosh, I'm not really entirely sure that I like the way he looks.
But also, it's because it was your first meeting, so you didn't really feel like you had you didn't really feel like you had to go and meet somebody.
Well,
because it was the first time.
I wasn't pressed to meet anyone. I was in my final year of university. I had a couple months to go. And I just remember telling my mum, you know, you can start looking for me. Because I knew it would take a while. Like, the reality is finding someone to marry and, like, choosing your life partner is no joke. Like, it's a genuinely serious thing for us. And that's why we really, really are considerate of like all of our choices, and we have the right to say no. So for me, I just said to my mum, you can start looking, but I didn't feel like there was any pressure for me to ASAP find someone. Like, there wasn't that rush. It was just, I knew it could take a really long time. And well, actually, I think a month after I said that to my mum, your CV came through. And actually at that point I genuinely wasn't looking. Like, I genuinely was like to my mum, I really am not ready to actually meet people at the moment. I genuinely thought I would meet someone like after I'd graduated. And I remember my cousin was like to me, you should go and see him, you can figure out, what you're looking for in a spouse. And it was one of those ones where I actually went to gather intel on what I was looking for in a husband. I'm not gonna lie, your CV was fine, everything that you'd shared. So essentially he just shared his background, his information. He did a little hobbies section, things that he's looking for in a wife. And I was okay with everything that you'd written. Like, nothing was alarming, nothing was concerning. This is the thing with the marriage CV. It's the same as a normal CV, the one that you'd go put forward for work. You put your best foot forward, you add all your best elements in it, you add the best experiences you've had. And it's essentially what our marriage CV is like. You share just other details such as like your family and where you are from Bangladesh, because these are things that the parents care about.
Yeah, it's more important to the parents than probably us.
Our generation, yeah.
No, I think
you care.
No, I care a lot.
You care a lot. I did not care. Like, I could have, that information that was added wouldn't have made a difference to me. But yeah, so there was all these other stuff of hobbies, and so just based on his CV and based on his crappy photos, I was like, okay, he seems alright. Nothing's wowing me, nothing's overly alarming about it. Nothing was making me jump up and down wanting to go meet him. But I did decide to meet him because my cousin was right in the sense that maybe it's time to meet someone in person, because I'd never met someone in person, and see actually what the conversation is like, see the things that I needed to make sure that were important to me was actually, covered. And so actually when we first met, for me, one of the key things was work. What's my career going to look like?
So you went into it not necessarily fully prepared.
Not really. I don't think I was fully I don't think you can... To be fair, I don't think...
So I think I was the opposite. I think I was fully... Not necessarily... I think I was a lot more prepared than you were.
Well, yeah, because, but you had done it before, though. So I think you knew the questions to ask.
Yeah, not just that. Also, my parents had done family background check on you guys already before.
Now,
we met
you
the
need to
first
explain
time.
that, because I don't know if a lot of people would do this normally, but when it comes to our marriage CVs, so like his family in Bangladesh went and visited my family in Bangladesh to kind of verify who we are as people, and like, you know, just our history a little bit.
Just to know if basically she was from a good family. She was from a good family background, and we did this. To be fair, we tried to do the same thing here as well, where we tried to get in touch with people that may possibly know you and your family, just to ask how you are as a family. So I don't think it's necessarily that. I know it's probably quite time consuming to do that, and it's difficult, especially if you're living in the same area, then it's a lot more easier to do that. But if you're living in different areas or in different even cities, it's a lot more difficult to do that, because you might not know those people around.
But the thing is, I just wonder, because obviously I know a lot of people like to use like social media to find out all of this information. And I think,
but you wouldn't have found anything on me, because I never had any social media.
No. But what I'm saying is, yeah, I think the normal thing is people to research the potential spouse on like social media and gather all of that information. But I think we do that one step further and actually look into the family and make sure, like, you know, we're going into a good family, you know, they've got good morals, things like that. And yeah, it all comes down to actually just talking to people and finding out information. And to be fair, your family, from people I knew, had said many great things, and it was weird.
Well, it was nice to kind of stumble upon people that we never knew us. Or, for example, like, you had family friends that knew my family, but you didn't know that they knew my family.
Exactly, yeah. It was
and
one
vice
of those
versa,
ones.
the same thing for us as well. So
which was a nice surprise. But yeah, so you kind of went in knowing that our family was good and they would match well.
But I think that part of it is more for the parents and the elders in the family to know, okay, I'm sending my daughter to this family. They're from a good family. So hopefully, if everything, you know, what we find out about them is correct, then they look after our daughter. Same thing for a man, the parents and the grandparents. It'd be, okay, we're bringing a girl from a good family, so hopefully she'll be a good person. But the thing is, sometimes it doesn't work like that. It just, sometimes people from good families aren't good, or someone from bad families can be amazing. But the hope is that obviously, if you do research on the family and they turn out to be a good family, then hopefully, you know, the girl or the boy that you get from that family is also good as well.
Well, it's just one extra step to take to make sure and ensure that, you know,
and it's also to give the parents a little bit more, I guess,
reassurance
that you know what, this person is going to be good for our family, and vice versa.
Yeah, and obviously a relationship can make or break for any sort of reason, but for us, I think just that additional step of, like, you know, my dad really did want to know more about your family, your father in specific, like, you know, who's your father and what is he like, because that stuff is actually really important to us, because, you know, one obviously for me, I'm living with my in-laws, so that was one thing my dad was always worried about. He was like, you know, it's hard to know how they will treat my daughter in their home. And I think just finding out all of these information from other family members who knew the family was like a huge relief for my dad, because it was just one of those things of, okay, right, you know, this person that I've known for 20 plus years has vouched for my father-in-law in such a way that has made my dad go, okay, cool, this is something that I'm happy to go forward with, and I'm happy to see their relationship, you know, start and stuff like that.
And that's all that is. It's just reassurance. But even with reassurance, you can never know how a person is until you actually live with them. So,
yeah, I agree.
So, but it's nice to have that reassurance that, you know, if this is what people are saying and if everything is fine, then hopefully it should be fine for my daughter, for my son.
Yeah.
As well. It's just a reassurance, but that doesn't necessarily always works.
Yeah.
I'm sure we can find examples of where the families are amazing but the kids aren't.
Yeah, and vice versa.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think, I think that's just one thing. Like, I think you just have to trust your gut as well with that sort of stuff. But yeah, going back to us actually meeting, yes, I was a little less prepared. I knew what my key things, I remember actually my cousin sister kind of gave me some tips, and she was like, you just need to think about like what's 3 or 5 key things that matters to you. And those are the things you kind of want to address in that first meeting. Now, I know a lot of people want to wait till the second meeting to kind of get into the nitty-gritty. I am so glad I didn't do that, and I went straight into it, knowing that I was meeting you for the first time, knowing that I was having essentially a first date with you, and it was really awkward. But at the same time, I knew the end goal was marriage, so why would I wait around to ask these questions?
No,
like, it just makes sense to go straight in with it.
Yeah, of course. You don't want to waste people's time, and kind of, or because sometimes, especially with elder parents, if you ask for a second meeting or a third meeting, they automatically get excited thinking this is going to go ahead. So you don't want to be. That's another thing to bear in mind as well, is you don't want to, give people false hope. Not that you're, that you're meaning to do that, but it just happens naturally. Especially with older parents, they get excited, especially when they're younger kids, or their last one or the first one is to get married. They get really excited. So I think that's why I think it's best if it's in the first meeting, even if it's difficult to ask, you should ask these things, because you're there with a purpose. You're not there just to waste time. You're not there to socialize. You're there for a purpose, which is to see whether this person is right for you to get married to or not, because you're not going to date.
Yeah, and having said that, both parties are well aware that the end goal is marriage.
Exactly.
So it's not like it's completely like them being blindsided. Everyone knows what's at stake here. So it's essentially just finding out and figuring out if there is, number one, that compatibility that you have. Are you attracted to one another? And are the things that are important to you considered or accepted by the spouse, the future potential spouse? So you came prepared with some questions, and I came prepared with some questions. Now, I think your key thing for me that I took away from that meeting was you living with your parents, and that being something you wanted to make sure.
It wasn't key thing, but it was one of the things that was important to me. But if you had said no, I don't want to live with my in-laws, that would have been perfectly fine. It's not. I wouldn't have been annoyed by it, but then it becomes. That would have been then my choice to whether go forward with it or not, because that was a big thing for me.
Yeah, but this is why I felt like that was one of the key things for you, and I think having spoken to you about it afterwards a lot, you found that with a lot of other girls, they don't want to move in, and the thing is, Islamically, you can say no. That's not a. It's in your right to say no. I mean, I could even say it now to you that I don't want to live with your in-laws. With my in-laws. But, alhamdulillah, like, I am really happy and content living with my in-laws. But the thing is, I knew I wanted to live with my in-laws. But I can see why for some men, like, financially, are you able to move out? It's so easy to say I don't want to live with my in-laws, but do you both have that financial capacity to move out and be able to fend for yourselves, especially with like prices and everything? Like, rent is ridiculous as it is, and it's just getting worse and worse now.
I think also living with in-laws has got a really bad name, and it's mainly because of probably Indian dramas that we watch. Honestly,
this is a whole topic for another podcast episode, because I am very pro living with the in-laws, but I think it's a whole discussion we can have about that. So definitely subscribe, because it is coming your way. But in terms of the questions you had, so my question was really important. It was about work. I did not do my degree to then let it fall to the side after marriage. And I think the reality is, it depends on actually how old-fashioned you are as well. Your thinking might be you want a housewife, which is totally fine, and I'm sure you'll find that. But because I went to university and I wanted a career and I wanted to be established and I wanted a name for myself, I knew without a doubt that I was not going to fall into a marriage where I wasn't able to do that and I wasn't able to pursue that. So that was like my deal breaker. That was the thing that if you had said you were looking for a housewife, we would not be married today. Because eventually, I will become a housewife. Eventually, once we have kids, there will always be a priority. But in that moment, just having nearly finished my degree, it was so important to me that my career means a lot. And, alhamdulillah, in the last 3 years, I have established my career a lot better than I had when I met you 3 years ago. I'm a journalist. I work at the Times. I got to pursue those things. But had you restricted me from pursuing those things, you know, it would have been really, really hard to stay with you. Okay, I don't think it would have been that hard to stay with you, but I think it would have made me question why you would have said yes to accepting it and then not actually being supportive in that sense.
Yeah, but yeah.
And I think that's what it is. I think
I
I know people who have actually been told, oh yeah, you can work, don't worry about it after marriage, and then they've gone back on their word. And I think that puts the bride in such a
pressure on both the husband and wife.
No, but I don't think even in the financial sense, you know, like if you've been
not financial in the sense that obviously if someone says to you, you can work, why not, and then they change their mind, it puts a lot of pressure on the marriage itself.
Yeah.
Because if someone's giving you a word and then they take it, then they take it back. It's you should never give a word, or you should never say something that you can't, keep hold of.
Yeah,
right?
And I think the difficulty with us is because it is an assisted marriage, there's only so much you can find out about one another before you actually get married. We're not talking about dating for 2 years. We're talking more about getting to know each other for like 4 months, which is what we did.
But again, it wasn't 4 months where we were meeting, each other secretly or in,
no.
It was our parents or our brothers or our sisters were involved where they were with us in those meetings. Obviously, they left us by ourselves to the side for a bit so that we could talk about stuff that was important to us. But generally speaking, it was.
We did it by the books.
Yeah.
We tried to keep it as halal as possible. Everyone was well aware that we were meeting each other, and my brother was chaperoning us. So we only really met 3 times before we got married.
You must have been really
eager,
impressed.
Okay, calm down. But yeah, I think for us, that very first meeting, like when I tell you it can be awkward, I mean that it wasn't just awkward because it was you and me. It wasn't
awkward for me.
Okay, for you were used to it at that point.
No,
but
not necessarily. But
we had my brother, my cousin's sister, my little nephew that we had to bring along with us because he was too young at the time to leave behind. Your sister and your brother-in-law. That's a lot of people for a first meeting. I always recommend you bring one person each.
No, not necessarily. Look at us. We brought 5 people and it turned out fine for us.
No. I think in the sense that also, like, one of the reasons why my brother came was because he should also see how this sort of situation works as well. That's why he was invited. But really, he shouldn't have been there. It could have been just me and my cousin's sister. And that would have been fine. Obviously...
No, your brother probably should have been there.
No, that's the thing. Obviously, people would debate on whether or not you need an actual mahram. Some people don't have a mahram, so they've got like a sister they can only bring along. It makes it really tricky. I guess it depends on how strict you want to be with it. And, some families have more flexibility with that. They're more open to it. So it is a personal choice. Obviously, with me, I had 3 brothers. So one of my brothers was gonna bound to go with me. Like, I wasn't gonna bring a cousin sister. The only reason my cousin sister came this first time around is because she was the one that introduced us. And that is why it made sense for her to be there. But yeah, so we had that meeting. Everyone was sat together. I remember I was sat opposite you. And
you're opposite my sister, no?
No, I was opposite you.
Directly?
Yeah.
No, you weren't.
Yes, I was. Do you not remember this? Is this my anniversary present? You forgetting how it started?
I was in front of your brother.
No, you weren't.
Afterwards, we were sitting opposite. Like, yes.
No. Yeah, maybe initially. No, it was.
Initially, you were not opposite me.
I was. I think they even specifically did it so that I would be opposite you. Okay. My cousin was opposite your sister, and my brother was opposite your brother-in-law. I can't believe you forgot. See what I have to live with. Like, can you imagine? Like,
well, clearly I was looking at you, clearly you were looking at me, but I wasn't looking at you.
Clearly,
I lowered my gaze,
which is good, as you should. But to be fair, yeah, I just remember being opposite you, and yeah, we just had like initial conversations, discussions, and then we were able to go on our own. And then this is when we were asking our own questions and kind of touching on things that were important to us. I think we did the general, like,
well,
travel.
For both of us, I think for both of us, obviously, number one came religion. That was the main thing. I mean, if we weren't compatible on that part, then I don't think, even if all the other boxes ticked, I don't think you would have went for me. Neither would I have went for you. That was the number one thing. Is, you know,
what's your religious aspirations?
Yeah, not just that, but it's also like, again, it was one of the questions that was asked by your sister. How religious are you? But I don't really like that question. But
I don't like that question.
But it was important to know, obviously, what you know.
Okay, in my sister's defense, she meant to say. I remember because we were driving up and we were talking about the religious aspect, and what she meant to say is, what sort of practicing Muslim are you? Or something along those lines. Not how religious are you, because I think how religious are you is so broad of a question, because like your brother-in-law said, you know, one person's how religious they are could be different to another person's like religiousness. Yeah. And so that was not the question to ask, but it was important to know. And obviously for us, you know, we want to know that you're doing your basics, you know, 5 pillars of Islam, you're praying, you're reading, you're, you know, fasting. Those are the things that was important to us. And then obviously we did briefly talk about, you know, Umrah and Hajj, and, you know, those expectations and aspirations as well. But yeah, when we went privately and sat together, I think we were just generally chatting, and then obviously we had, what was your key thing then? If it's not the like living with the parents thing, what was it? Because
it was about religion, because I think I'm pretty sure I did ask. I can't remember what question I asked you.
Yeah, I know you asked a couple, but
yeah. That was the number one thing. I think I had a list of like 5 things, and it was like in order of priority, which one was the highest priority, and which one I can kind of, you know, if you didn't take, it would be fine for me. You know, for example, like if you went, no, I never want to work, that's fine. Like imagine that if that was my number 5. Right, and my number 1 was a religion, and number 2, and so on and so on.
Okay, so for me, like the religion questions you asked me, I felt like that was a given. So it was never number 1 on my list of things you were expecting.
No, but which was nice for me, because that means obviously that box for me was ticked off. But it's not necessarily the case for all girls or all boys where that's a given.
Yeah, no, I agree because I know with my brother, he experienced something of when he met someone and he asked them about religion, and they couldn't really, they explained, and they were truthful in the fact that they don't pray 5 times a day. And for my brother, it was a no-brainer. It wasn't going to go ahead. And, you know, that was really key. That was number 1 on his list as well. So I totally get that part. But, you know, when you were asking me those questions, it felt like such a given that it didn't even feel like it was part of your like top 5 questions. Do you get it? Because it just felt like it was an obvious conversation point for us. You know, it was important to me. It was important to you. I think that was clear for us that I didn't really see, even it wasn't even in my top 5 as well, to be fair, because I just knew that without a doubt, if that's not okay, then all these other questions are pointless pretty much.
But I think a lot of the first meetings also about kind of seeing how the conversation flows between the 2 people. Yes, obviously you want to ask all these important questions, but you also want to see if you can speak at the same level, and if you have, not necessarily, like for example, for us being me and you, we're probably complete different people.
Yeah,
right.
I think so.
But I think like there's fundamental aspects that we definitely agree on.
Yeah.
But in terms of like us as personalities, we're completely different. You're you know, artsy person. I'm more science and maths person, right? So we're completely different as people. But there's fundamental stuff that we definitely agree with.
I think that's
important. You don't have to be exactly the same. You don't have to like the same stuff. You don't even have to be into the same stuff. It just but there's the key principles that you live your life by. If you match with those things, then you're probably on the right track, or you're probably on the same wavelength in terms of thinking wise, and in terms of like probably your religiousness as well.
Well, it was easy for me because I remember like one thing you were saying a lot was that you were really interested in sports. You were interested in traveling. And actually over the last like 3 years, like one thing we've done together is like a lot of different, like we've gone to gym together and things like that. And I'm not very much a gym person. I'm not really big on sports either. But like even we went hiking together, which I never would have done. But I think like, you know, that openness of trying things out because your spouse likes it is one thing that we were able to do for each other with how different we are as people. So I agree with the fact that because we had so many key principles that aligned, it made it easy to accept all the other, like, you know, additional things that you're telling me. Let me ask you this question. What was your first thought when you saw me?
That's a hard question. Oh, that's true. I thought you were very attractive. You had a big butt.
You gotta say that.
And but attraction is important. But I thought I found you attractive the first time I saw you, and that was important to me because if you're not attracted to somebody, then obviously we had at that point we haven't even had a conversation yet. So it was just I saw you, you saw me. We greeted each other, and then you greeted my brother-in-law and my sister, and I greeted your sister and your brother, and that was it. We didn't really have a conversation then. For about a good 20-25 minutes, we didn't have a conversation at all. We weren't even.
Yeah,
talking.
it wasn't a direct conversation.
But we had just
about us.
Yeah, but we had just seen each other. So I think from just the first time meeting you, that was the first thing, is that I'm attracted to this person. So yes, I think so. Going into the conversations, I was a lot more comfortable, or probably a lot more kind of eager for this to do well, compared to maybe any other ones.
This is the thing. So, because obviously, clearly, I remember sitting opposite you for about 25 minutes. And, like, just, obviously, I was trying to avoid looking anywhere but your forehead. But it was really hard because, obviously, at that point, I was trying to figure out if I liked the way you looked or not. I think initially when I sat down, I was like, oh, he looks better than his pictures. I remember thinking that. And actually, when we were done with our meeting and everything, and I got in the car with my brother, he was like, okay, yeah, those pictures did not do him justice. He looks better in person. My cousin sister said exactly the same thing. And I remember she said it to my parents as well, like, oh, he's much better looking in person. Well, I think that's another thing that is also quite a taboo in our discussions around like arranged marriages. It's almost like we can't say we're not attracted to someone. No, I think it's and I think, okay, you might have a different relationship with your parents where you could say it.
Not just that. No, I don't know if that was the case before, because I think people, I know for a fact, well, I don't know if someone got, in my family, someone got married to another person where they weren't attracted. But
but I'm saying when it comes to saying no to someone because you're not attracted to it, I think that's the one thing that people find tricky to kind of express, because it seems like it seems like the wrong thing to say, like you're judging someone by the way they look, but at the same time, like you're gonna spend your life with them, you need to have that attractiveness to them.
If you're not attracted to that person from day one, then you're not gonna be attracted to them 10 years after, when they've when you've had children and they possibly have gained weight or whatnot.
Yeah,
and it goes for the same men and women, the same both ways.
Exactly.
So you're not gonna all of a sudden grow attraction to somebody just because you've been living with them for 10 years.
But this is what I'm saying. I feel like when it comes to actually rejecting someone because you're not attracted to them, it's such a taboo for us to say that as a reason. No, I think for you maybe it's easy. Maybe it's easier for men, but I don't think it's easier for women to be like, no, I'm not attracted to him like that. It depends on who you're saying it to. Like, I could say it to my cousin sister, but I don't think I could say it to my mum. Like, I don't find him attractive. I think now I probably would say it at this point of my life, at the age that I'm at, if I wasn't married already. But when I was 21 meeting you, I think me saying that would have looked kind of not the best.
No, but I don't necessarily agree with that. I think your parents probably would have been fine with it. But I think I
know. They probably would have been fine with it. Or my parents would have been like, but why wouldn't you find him attractive? He's a very good looking guy. But that's the other thing I feel like people try to avoid, not having to say that as a reason, because just because someone else finds you good looking doesn't necessarily mean that I find you good looking. And I shouldn't have to say, if that was the deal breaker for me, I probably would have mentioned something else as a reason, probably not said that I didn't find you attractive.
I think it becomes a lot more difficult if, for example, let's say the parents have already spoken and they've both agreed that they would like this marriage to go through, and then you say, you know what, I don't find this person attractive. Then they're like, okay, now we have to backtrack on all our words. Yeah. I think that's when it was a lot more trickier, because then it's like, okay, for what reason?
I feel like there's a whole topic around that, the expectations of the parents when it comes to arranged marriages, because you're right in the sense that even if after the first meeting you schedule another meeting, they're almost so eager, and to the point that they think, yes, this could potentially be a thing, and it becomes so tricky, because then it's harder to say no. I feel like our generation, like, we wouldn't do that to our kids. I think we are more open-minded to the fact that a second date, a third date doesn't necessarily mean it's a yes already. It just means you're getting to know one another.
And I think that's also because of the fact that when they got married, so obviously our parents have been brought up in different times.
Yeah.
And even then, some parents are obviously still really open to, having more than, many meetings and whatnot. But I think most Asian or Bengali parents, because they were brought up in a time where they would only go and meet the girl or the guy for one time, and then based on that they make the decision whether they get married or not. I think they still have that thought, or kind of mindset where when it's their children's turn, they think, okay, one meeting and then you should be able to decide if you want to live with that person or not. But it's because their life was a lot more simpler than ours, in the sense that they were just looking for somebody, they already knew what they were looking for, and when they came into it, okay, I like this person in terms of look-wise and whatnot, and they take whatever questions they had, if they would answer them well, that's fine, right? But for us, I think, especially now, it's a lot. I think a lot of people are a lot less prepared when they go into these kind of things.
Yeah,
even at the age of, for example, 25, 26, there will be a lot of guys and girls that still don't. There's that if you ask them, they'll say, I'm not really sure what I'm still looking for, and I think, to me, that's that's not acceptable.
That's concerning, considering you're going to meet someone looking to get married.
Yeah, and it's not,
and you don't really know what you're looking for.
Exactly. And I think, because I think you should, and I think everyone, even if you don't get married at 22, 23, 24, 25, I think you should. There's some preparation that needs to be done, leading up to these meetings. Whether you listen to Islamic lectures, listen to lectures by Islamic scholars, whether you read a book, or articles, whatever you do, but there's some research needs to go into this, thinking about, okay, what do I want? What am I looking for? What could I be providing the person, that is coming to this meeting or whatnot. So I think there's some, if you're not prepared at all and you're just going there, I'm going to freestyle it, I'm going to wing it, it's never going to end up good, because and the other thing is, you're wasting the other person's time, because they've probably come in prepared, and so when they come in, they're disappointed. That person will be disappointed that someone's come in not prepared at all to ask any questions or ask anything at all, or they don't even know what the first thing or how an arrangement setting goes.
But I do think there is something there in terms of for me, I think obviously I was quite assertive and I knew what I wanted to ask you. But had I been more nervous and more shy, I probably wouldn't have asked you those questions. And then we would have needed a second meeting anyway, because I would have felt so out of my element talking to you like that. And knowing
that's fine. But what I'm saying, what I meant to say was, but you still prepared. You went
in some angles, yes.
Yeah, so you were still prepared. So even if it was little research, whatever it did, but you still did some preparation in terms of before you came to meet me. There are people that go into meetings not knowing anything, not knowing what they want to ask, not knowing what they're looking for in a spouse, not knowing anything about that second person. So and they ask generic questions, or they ask basic questions which doesn't even stimulate the person kind of to respond back properly. So that's why it's so important to be prepared, even if it's a little bit. You still have to prepare something, and you still, or obviously for you, maybe you weren't, because it was a first meeting. I don't know how much preparation you could do, but before I went to the meetings, one of my friends, messaged me lectures by imams that on marriage and stuff like that, and I'd been listening to those stuff. So I was fairly prepared in that sense, in terms of knowing what I was looking for. That's where I got the my list of 5, where this is my top priority, and then it goes goes down in decreasing, importance. Yeah. So there needs to be some kind of preparation.
Yeah, I agree, and I think, I guess it just depends on. Also, I think the eagerness to get married, because I do think some people go into it having been pushed because of their quote-unquote age and how old they're getting because they're not married yet. And, you know, some people are just set on not getting married so soon or so quickly. I know we can easily say, you know, between the ages of 27 to 30, that is getting too old and you should be married by that point. But the reality is a lot of people prefer to, you know, focus on their careers, but then they've got like the parents hounding them about getting married because, you know, it is part of our deen. It's half of our deen and it's something that is important. But some people would like to wait a little bit later to do that and pursue that. But I could see with peer pressure and like family pressure, it's easy to kind of just accept going on these dates without like actually giving a crap and, you know, equally wasting the other person's time. But I don't know, maybe it's more common than it is.
But then as a son or daughter, you have to tell your parents
that you're not ready.
Yeah, because otherwise you're wasting their time and you're wasting a stranger's time going to meet them, possibly giving them hope. Because what if you meet that stranger and they actually think that, you know, you're a really nice person and they would like to move this forward? You wasted maybe a day or, you know, sometimes a week, because some people take a long time to prepare for these things. So you wasted people's time. I think
there's also another thing of, I know it can be hard to say no to your parents and explain why you don't want to pursue a relationship, but even you saying yes to that first meeting, their expectations are high that it is it could potentially happen sort of thing.
But at the same time, I know usually parents get a bad rep for this, like, or, you know, most people go, you know, or your parents are pushing, sometimes push, not all parents, some parents, you know, they can be pushy and whatnot, but just keep in mind, your parents are never thinking the worst for you.
Yeah,
they've always got, even to maybe those people, you know, that have had experiences where your marriage are broken down because your parents didn't like the family, or they didn't like the girl or the boy for whatever reason. But just know that this is at that time you just need to be patient, because your parents are not thinking, your parents are not putting you through this because they think they want to make you suffer. They're saying it because they genuinely think this is the best for you, not to go ahead with this marriage or not to go ahead with this proposal. And it's so difficult to accept at that time, because sometimes when you speak to somebody for a while, you get emotionally attached or you get emotionally involved, right? Purposely or, you know, or unintentionally, right? Mm-hmm. Right? Sometimes it happens, and so it's very difficult then to let go and go, you know what, my parents have said no, so I'm all of a sudden, you know, I'm going to be okay the next day. It just doesn't happen. So, but like I said to you, at that time, it's really difficult to be patient. But that's the time to be patient and just to have patience and know that, you know what, my parents are doing this for my best. It's difficult for me to accept it, but in the long run, you know, you will see that it will happen for a reason, and it was all for your best. And it's difficult to accept that. But
it just generally as well, like not even getting to the point of like them liking each other and then being told, like by the parents, oh, I don't think this marriage is suitable for you. Even just for them from the get-go of like getting a CV from your parents, you know, they've looked at it, they've looked at the pictures, and they're probably thinking, okay, yeah, I can see my daughter or my son being with this person. They seem like a perfect candidate on paper. And I do think there is something there in the sense that, you know what is so wrong with accepting our parents' advice on our potential spouses and the families we're going to join. You know, if you look at any other social media app, any sort of friendship you have with someone, like, you know, if you're going on a date with someone off of Tinder, right, you'd go to your friend and be like, yo, what do you think of this guy? Like, it's such a normal thing to do, like, to kind of get input from your girlfriends, you know, your guy friends, whoever it may be. But why is it so crazy for us to want to get that sort of input from our parents? Like, it shouldn't be a case of, oh, you know, and I'm sure there's loads of people that do get their input. Like, I could see, like, I know some people, like some girls that have like spoken to their mum about their potential dates and gone, oh, what do you think of him? Because it's so normal to kind of want to get that reaction from your parents or from your friends, because sometimes they're seeing something you're not, and that is so normal to want to get that sort of advice and input on.
But I think a lot of people have the mentality, we're living in different times, or our parents were born up in different times, so they don't know, you know, what it's like for us. Yes, to an extent that's true, but also their life experiences isn't just void just because they live, they grew up in a different time. That if it's an arranged setting or whatnot, right? They that experience that they've gone through is still valid for you. They can still be, they can still give you wisdom. They can still give you guidance on, how to approach certain things and how to do certain things. And I think that's one. I think, but that's also like the ego of the youth, thinking I know better than my parents because I was brought up in this country, and so I've hung around with people, my age or whatnot, or I've seen the world more than my parents have seen the world, so I know better than my parents. And I think that's an ego thing more than my parents don't know.
Yeah, but I think that comes more down to obviously their experiences from a different time, and perhaps they've come to this country, so but equally they're learning just as we are learning growing up in this country, right? I think the only real difference is between our parents' generation and ours is the fact that now we're more open about like choosing who our spouse is and being more vocal with what we want and who we want and the expectations we have as husband or wife. I think we have the ability, the capability to say to our parents, no, this person is not right for me because X, Y, and Z. And I think that's the only difference that we've had. My parents, I'm sure with your parents as well, like, it wasn't that they didn't have a choice, it was just they were more accepting of it and they didn't really question it. Whereas we have the ability to question the decisions.
No doubt. But they both aren't wrong. This is the thing. Their parents aren't wrong, but neither are we in that sense. Because if you were to ask your parents, they wouldn't have stayed together for 20, 30, 40 years.
Exactly.
Had they not been happy in a marriage. I know there are cases obviously where there are some people where they stay in marriage because of kids, for the sake of kids and whatnot. But I don't think you can say I don't think you can say, all arranged marriage are like that because they just stay together, especially the old generation, because because they have to.
No, I don't think, and I think especially now, considering like all of their kids are all grown up and in a society where like divorce and things like that are such a big thing and a big topic, like if there was genuinely issues in the parents' relationship, they've got the support of the kids to kind of help them through it rather than just being shunned away.
And I think we're more vocal about how we feel in terms of like our love for our spouse or not, and whereas our parents' generation, it's more
they don't really
unspoken.
Say it. Yeah,
it's unspoken, but it's there.
I mean, I think,
and there's something really endearing and sweet about that as well. Well,
I think
both of our parents know, obviously they love each other, but they don't say out in front of everybody.
No, but what this is where I think it matters to say that, like my mum cooking for my dad, that is her saying she loves him without saying it. I think it's just a clear appreciation for one another. Look, without being so vocal.
Look, when someone takes time out of their day to do something for you or do something for somebody else, that's them showing love. Whether they say it or not, right? They go out of their way to do something. They go out of their way to cook. They go out of their way to do, cleaning. Your husband might do it once in a while or whatnot, right? But if that's the old generation or whatnot. But what I'm saying is, if someone goes out of their way to do something, that's them showing, whether they say it or not, that's them showing that, they probably appreciate you, that you do all this for them and that you're with them. But it's different for us compared to, because like I said, we're more vocal about it, whereas they're more probably through actions, and they probably don't speak of it as much. But I'm sure, that they still, obviously they love each other very much. It's just they don't say it.
I don't think it needs to be said as well. I think, actions speak louder than words sometimes. Okay, well, we've rambled on for a really long time, and one thing I will say is that we'll definitely be going off on tangents. I mean, I think we covered quite a few different topics within this episode. We did talk about our relationship a little bit, assisted marriage, how the CV situation works, meeting for the first time. And there's so much more to come. We've got a lot of topics to discuss, definitely follow us on our social media, which is at small TLK pod, and let us know what you'd like to hear more from us about, and if you have any questions and queries, you can share that on those social media platforms. Definitely subscribe if you haven't already, but for now I think it's
Goodbye.
goodbye. Yeah, I think we shall see you in the next episode.